Waternomics, where understanding about what you eat and what you spend, right? Energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? So it just goes and transfers from one medium to the next. Water is a medium for transferring energy. So if the energy is not in the water that I'm consuming, then what is it in? And what are you putting your faith into?
Mm-hmm. Welcome to the Expand Your Experiences podcast. I'm your host, Rashawn Stevenson. The intention for this show is to facilitate conversations, deconstructing experiences, discussing lessons learned, and tools that you can apply to your everyday life. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Expand Your Experiences podcast. Welcome to any first-time listeners, and welcome back to anyone who's listened before. This episode is going to be a little bit different than, some of the ones that I've done before. This is somewhat of a jam session. So if you're familiar with the way some musicians get down, they get together with other musicians and they just get together and play without any preparation, without anything. So this conversation is essentially a jam session. My guest was introduced to me by my previous guest. Me and Carl Hale, shout out to Carl Hale and Ginger Hale Lemonade. But we were having a conversation. And after the conversation, he just said, "Hey man, I got somebody I want you to meet." He introduced me and we clicked. And he agreed to come on the show and share some of his knowledge. And when I say some of his knowledge, I mean that. I learned so many things about water. Yes, water, like so much. And you're going to learn a lot as well. Chris is a wealth of knowledge. And I also want to give a little disclaimer that I recorded this episode in a cafe, so you may hear a little bit of background noise from the people who were also in the cafe. And there was a couple times that there was a break in our communication via the Wi-Fi, I think. And we took a couple intermissions in between the conversation. So that only happens there's 2 breaks, but the conversation still flows and it's still something that you'll enjoy and get a lot of value out of. So as always, continue to expand your experiences. So this is one of the first jam sessions that I've ever recorded, and I'm excited about it. I got my man Christopher Harrison on the line. What's up, bro?
Peace, King. How you doing, bro?
Man, I'm coolin'. Let me ask you, let's jump right in. What made you say yes to hopping on a call and having a jam session with a person that you virtually met 2 days ago? And what was the reason why you said yes to doing this?
Big reason why I said yes. It's funny because brother Carl, he came in the office after he had left you, and he's like, "Yo, I got a brother you need to speak to, man." And he had just left from up here, and it's like, "Yo, I got a brother you need to speak to, man." And real good, real insightful brother, man. And I think y'all do good, man. So I was like, all right, and he came he highly recommended. I was like, look, bro, I'm gonna get with him. I'm gonna definitely do that. Definitely appreciate like he gave me the information. I was like, all right, I'm gonna hit him up. And then you had reached out to me before I had got to you though. But I was like, yeah, it's a good feeling, man. When the energy, the people that you surround yourself with, normally attract other good people, right? So I know that he's usually in a good space. So if he comes and he recommends somebody, man, then I'm all aboard. I'm all in with it.
It's funny because that's exactly how it happened on our end. He said, "Hey man, I got a guy that you got to connect with before you leave the States." And he was like, he'll break down everything from this, that, and the third. He was like he basically said the same thing about you, like that you were insightful and that he just knew we would click and that he had to make the connection.
Right.
Well, he didn't guarantee the connection, but he did say, I'm gonna reach out to him and let him know. So I wanted to reach out. But one thing that he did describe when he was talking, he was like, this guy can break down everything from water to the economics and all kind of stuff. So I thought that he was using that as an example,
Uh-huh.
but he literally meant you can break down water. What's your, so tell us what your connection, well, not just your connection, but our connection to water and what that means to you and how you got into the industry.
Uh, so the water connection to me came by way of, um, for one, me realizing that there is a difference in the water, and not all water is created equal. Growing up in, you know, let's just say moderate standards of living, or just lower class or middle class society, not all the water is considered the same. And I didn't realize that until I was introduced by one of my cousins, my older cousin. He had some spring water, and it's like he was selling it, and it kind of threw me off for a loop because he doesn't usually sell water. He sells, other things and so forth. But like it just kind of threw me for a loop. So I'm like, yo, what's so special about this water, right? And I drank it. I was like, man, this is really good water. So once I started looking around and looking in our stores and just kind of doing my research on water and so forth, I was looking and not noticing that there were spring water in our area. It was mostly all purified water, acidic type waters, and we're not even given a choice at that. So for me, I'm very big on just allowing me to have information. The more information that I'm able to have, the better decisions that I'm able to make. And I think that all people should have that ability to make the right decisions based on the choices, because I don't know your family life, you don't know mine, and so forth and so on. So it just started out as me bringing information into our people and letting them know that there's a resource. Well, in providing this, I was thinking that that was an answer to a lot of the diseases that we were in, that were plaguing our community. And I started to get into understanding hydration. Hydration became very pivotal. Understanding how uh, how we're used through propaganda and different types of channels, through music and so forth. So I started becoming consciously aware of the environment and my role in this environment, as I started getting into water. So me learning and understanding water started opening up more channels of information that was starting to flow into me.
Well,
Uh,
let me jump in
yeah.
and have you break something down for people who might not know the difference. I mean, and myself being included. I have a general understanding of the difference between spring water and purified water. Would you mind breaking down the
Mhm.
differences and what are the differences and what, yeah, just start there. Look, what are the differences between what you get as a spring water and a polarized, I mean, not polarized, but a purified water.
Spring water.
So,
Okay. So purified water is stripped. They first strip it of everything. So there's nothing in water. Water is sticky. Water needs to grab hold of things. This is why, things dissolve in water. It's a universal solvent. It's a basis for everything to connect to, right? So because water has to connect, if there's nothing in it, there's no energy per se into that water, which means that the mineral contents, the nutrients and things that we get that helps to build our structures, right? So this is where you get structured water. Water gathers its structure through the environment, the rocks and the earth, all these things that goes into the water, because water holds on to all these different things. So
sure.
it's important to have that spring water because it literally ties a connection to your surrounding world and environment, us as living organisms. If you're going to put out a message, you'll put it out in the water. That's something that all organisms need to be able to connect to. So that is a importance of having natural fruits, vegetables, and things of that nature, right? Purified water is strict, right? So what they do is take all the contaminants, take everything out, because you can't pick contaminants from nutrients and so forth like that. So you try to take everything out of it as much as possible, and then they re-add the minerals and things that are needed. But anytime you man make anything, and you can always tell based on um, farming, the farming industry, when they started using in soil, the fertilizers and so forth like that. These issues don't normally come up until years down the road, so we never really directly tie a connection into these things. So purified water is literally stripping our people of energy, right? Because it does not have the natural resources that it needs to or supposed to have. One of the big reasons of why is because water has energy as it goes through the earth, right? But anytime water goes through a process that is not supposed to go, so meaning that it's pumped from its natural environment and it's not freely flowing, then it loses energy. Anytime it goes against the flow of current, it's losing energy. So by the time it goes through your water treatment facility and out your pipes and into these bottles and then sit in the bottles and then it's shipped and then it's sitting in the shipping containers and through the different climate changes and so forth and so on, then you start to understand that it has no energy by the time you consume it. And now we're talking about that energy has to then come down to your mitochondria, right? Which is the energy powerhouse. A lot of people are familiar with that now, right? The energy powerhouse within the cell. Your mitochondria literally produces a molecule of water as it breaks down glucose. So this is your body energy chain, right? So now if I don't have enough energy to actually power my mitochondria that comes through glucose, which is sugar, breaking down the sugar and so forth, and the water, and that water has to come in and it takes things out, right? Because it's sticky and it cleans it and purifies it. So now you have a saturation of solid, stagnated water that's sitting, which creates toxicity, which creates acidity, which creates pain, which creates disease, and see how all these things. And now, when we was just talking about pixels, now you start to scale that out, and because we see everything from so up close, right? But when you scale that out, then that starts to look like our communities, right? The communities, lower economic communities, as crack, impoverished, broken down buildings, things like that of that nature. You go inside the body, that's literally what that area is. And then it starts to surround, then it starts to steal, rob, kill, pull resources from other surrounding organs, neighbors, things of that nature in order to neutralize the acidity part, right? So this is what this starts to look like within the body. So when I start to understand that, it's more about water is not the end all be all for healing. In order to heal, you do need a combination of things, breathing. We have a lot of oxidative stress. I didn't really realize that, but I was thinking that just selling water could be the answer in informing people on alkaline water. Now I feel like it's more of a hoax. So I literally changed my position from one point to the next. And the reason why I say hoax is because not alkaline itself, but they'll use alkalinized water, which means machine-made water to replicate what Mother Nature does naturally, right? So anytime you do that, anytime you charge something in that type of magnitude, you have the ability to lose it over time, right? So this is why when you charge that water through those machines and so forth, you actually have a period of time for you to actually consume it. Now, when you're doing that process, now you start messing with your doors and so forth, valves within your body, right? Because we're electrical currents. So now when you start the electric charge, now you start opening up valves that might not need to be opened quite yet, right? Because everything is based off of how your body is engineered. So anytime we start putting in, different types of chemicals and so forth like that, right? Then you get different type of bonding, different types of release agents. So my understanding of that is, and it's not hasn't came, true yet, but the machine waters and things like that of that nature is going to start to plague us down the road in the future, which is one of the reasons why I try to stay to the spring water. But I do understand that, there's a balance and not all water is created equal. And please interrupt me at any time, man, because I mean, like I can go, because it's just, like when I get going, it's just because it's always so many different steps and layers.
Well, no, that's I mean that breakdown just in general. I'm gonna let you go, bro, because that is information that and that's a breakdown that I've never even heard someone, use in terms of the importance of water and hydration and because the average person will just grab and myself included, will just grab a bottle of water, when I'm thirsty, not necessarily reading what it's in it or where it's with the source or anything like that. But we'll still have in my mind, I'm doing the right thing in terms of being hydrated and so forth.
Right.
Whereas I think with the little adjustment in that, and I think you said something about that earlier, where you talked about how information informs your actions or something like that. You said something along those lines, but like this information can help inform others' actions to the point where we can change and start reviving some of those broken down places within our body, and we're constantly building them without even knowing that. And then and what I like about it is essentially it's healing from the inside, and when you heal from the inside, then it starts to reflect on the outside world as well. So that's why I love what your breakdown.
Right. And you actually got that really, really good, because I know I hear a lot of, with this conscious movement, it's a lot of people saying, work on the inside, or it's all about self and inside. But when anytime you really start to really talk about self, you start to make it more of a selfish mission where it's not. And then you start to, limit your point of view based on thinking about individualism, right? Because when we start talking about the need to look after others, and to be selfless, instead of selfish, everything in capitalism teaches you self first. So I cannot help you until I help, myself first, right? But water does not move like that, right? Because water is literally spreading out through and helping every living organism and distributing resources for everything, which we are. We're literally bottles of water. So sometimes if I can't find the answer within myself or try to help myself, sometimes the answer is in helping other people to actually help to solve whatever situation that you actually have.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I bring these water principles and things like that too, because for me, understanding water and how water moves, then you can understand how we're all connected, understand life, and then you understand the different paradigms that we're in. And then just you being in a place, I can respect the place that you're in, or anybody else in, and it allows me to then, not trespass against others and have, the ability to forgive others when, they trespass against me and so forth, because we're all expanding and growing and we're building. Mm-hmm. So water literally gives you the information through the universe to actually to have more information basically than just on a hydration level. So you're hydrating your mind, you're hydrating your consciousness, you're hydrating your spirituality, you're hydrating so many other different things more than just the physical nature of it, right? So the more I can disconnect you from the universal God, creator, masterful design, right, to which we all things come from, and to which our whole body, understanding that he cannot make anything. If he made us from out of his hand, and just saying the creator or whatever, whatever your beliefs is, you cannot make a person from the outside and then go in the inside and make them. You make them from the inside out. So if you're made from the ground, the dirt, things of that soil, right? You pick up sand and dirt, it's going to go right through your hands. What you need to add is what? Water. Water literally connects to all those different things and puts those things together in order for it to be malleable. Brother Carl just walked in.
What up, man?
So what up, man? Good. That's good. Yeah.
So that's, and it's funny, man, because I'm sitting here.
And I'm doing a live too, man. My brother McCray owns a live spring in North Carolina, live alkaline water. He's one of the first brothers to get his water in the Walmart. So very good brother, very knowledgeable. And as well, he said, remember, water is the earth glue, right? So that's literally what I was just speaking about. It's the glue, it's sticky, right? So that's why it's so important to understand that when water has minerals and nutrients in it, like Carl uses it to make his juice, you don't have to use as much sugar. You don't have to use as much other ingredients because it's already things that's in water. Now, if water is acidic and it has nothing in it, you're going to have to put more into it in order to get something out. So you get out what you put in at the end of the day.
So with all that being said, and you having a lot of knowledge in that space. What's one of the biggest misconceptions that you usually hear, or what's the thing that people usually don't understand? I mean, I'm pretty sure we don't understand a lot of what you just broke down, but the most common thing that you always hear, it's almost like this is a door of misunderstanding that once people open that door, then their whole world in terms of their understanding of water changes.
There's a few of them. A lot is that all water's the same. But I think a lot of us are getting out of that because there's a lot of information being shared about water. So, once I feel like a lot of that information is out, I kind of move on to the next part of life. Like I feel like a lot of people is understanding that not all water is created equal. There's a difference. There's a difference. It's a lot of information being shared and passed about. So now is the plastic bottles. Now, how is the plastic bottles really affecting the earth? And there's a documentary on Netflix that literally talks about there's The Devil We Know, and there's another one. I can't remember the name of the other Netflix documentary. I think it's Oceanspiracy. I think it is. It's called Oceanspiracy, where they talk about, the hidden agendas behind people, because there's always an agenda being pushed. So this is the thing where they start to push plastic bottles as being so evil and it's consuming our ocean, our ocean life and the water and all this and that, right? But then when they dig behind it and they dig deep into it, these these uh these platforms are literally covering up other things that are going on. And they have these live documentaries where they talk about it's the fishing lures that they're cutting and that they're stringing that the animals are eating. They're not eating a bottle of water per se, a plastic bottle per se, maybe the whales or so forth, But when they start to break these things down, it's the fishing lures that they're cutting and they're letting go, and it's strangling up and it's killing the animals and so forth like that. So it's a lot bigger, but it's easier to go ahead and put the blame on the bottled water company, right? So now they're starting to tax the plastic bottles for us using plastic bottles. So you can see a lot of businesses are now starting to shift into aluminum, which is all good, eco-friendly, and we're starting to get into that. We do need to protect the earth, but it's just how you pass the information out, because you're not going to make the fishing, and how much, money that the fishing industry is literally making, right? It's literally creating ripples basically in our way of life in order to get us to another, when I say another more eco-friendly way of living, right? So big thing for us is that, we use plastic bottles, the cost is cheaper and so forth like that. But, for us as resources, how many people can afford to continue to keep buying glass? And it's more expensive, it's heavier. So a lot of us, bottled water companies and so forth, and even beverage companies and so forth in general, have to find other means to actually distribute our goods and, provide services in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's called, I've seen the ocean one. I gotta check out The Devil We Know.
The Devil We Know is about the Teflon. So this talks about the Teflon. A lot of these industrial companies that are making Teflon and so forth like that, they are putting their chemicals basically so this is the same thing with fluoride. A lot of times they'll put things back into the water because the water it's going to either dissolve it, dilute it, right, which they're hoping on, or other animals are going to consume it, which breaks down even more because everything breaks down. So when you put fluoride into our water system, they're literally trying to get rid of fluoride. So the way they get rid of it is by giving it and putting it in our drinking water. Then we consume it. And because fluoride is so electronegative, it's going to bond with different parts of our body. So then we end up literally filtering the fluoride, in a sense, because it then collects and sticks into our body, or we piss it out or whatever, or we, excrete it out. So everything has a filtering process. It's just what part of the filtering process do you want to be in, or what chain are you in? You know what I mean? That's why you're like, yo, you have mountain spring water, and then you have people that have water that's all the way down beneath the earth, that's no man has touched, filter. So these are the reasons why they publicize those different types of water, because Like you don't want the water that's already at the end of the mountain that everybody done came in, touched, and distribute, and now you're getting the last bit of it, right? That's free flowing all the way down. You want to either get it at the top or you want to get it so far beneath the earth's surface that, it literally takes a drop of rain that once it hits the dirt. Chief, you might correct me on it, takes what, 20 years, for it to actually hit the aquifer beneath it. So that's how long Mother Nature takes to filter Earth.
Hmm.
Let me see. Chief just and I'm live too, brother. So I
You good?
got people, man, say they're trying to cover up the dumping of chemicals from these commercial plants, right? And they haul out in the ocean and dump on the ships, right? So once again, Mother, they're over flooding it, and what's going to end up happening is that we're going to end up paying the debt onto it, like
Mm.
our kids, our next generation, because
Mhm.
the quality of water and life and living is either going to be astronomical high that you're not going to be able to afford it, and we still have the same amount of water that we've always had. So, when they talk about these things are decreasing around us, they're promoting fear, scarcity, which is, the things that I show on my Instagram. I like to bring awareness and knowledge. It's not to bring fear, but it's to make you prepared. So even if you believe in scriptures in the Bible or what, what I mean, whatever what have you, and you understand that there's a testament time in every single indigenous population or uh, every society has been ended since the beginning of time. So what makes you think that we're any different? You know what I mean? We were doing, Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Mesopotamia. Every era has come to an existence. And we're trying to figure out what these existences are. Why we always think that we stand apart. And the same amount of water has been here, right? So the information is in what? The information of our ancestors in water. If you watch, scary movies like Jason, Shocker, and things like that, people throwing their ashes out into the water is the reason why. Because the ancestors are able to continue to keep learning. We bury our people in coffins. They have no way of getting those nutrients and minerals back into the soil of the earth to which they came from. So now they're literally trapped in the coffin.
You know, a couple of things that come to mind when you say that. One of them is the process of, because we talked about purified and we kind of talked about spring. So that's where I want you to jump in and talk about like your your company specifically and and what that process looks like and like how that process because it sounds like from my understanding you're getting it and it's already been filtered through Mother Nature to the point where now you're helping distribute this water that's already been filtered through Mother Nature. And now you've made that a consumable that we can then, engage with and, help heal from the inside. Is that correct?
Correct. So what I do is I specialize in bringing freshwater resources into our local area, right? Hampton Roads and uh, Maryland, D.C. area. So um, I go to Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, and I go to Yacksonville, North Carolina, two freshwater resources that I know, right? I know of, and I bring those in here. Reason, and I'm sorry to touch on your question again. What exactly was it that you
It,
asked?
it, it
My
was,
process.
yeah, it was your process. Mainly like, what's the difference, but like where you're getting it or how you're engaging and then, I guess how you're I don't want to say like is it what's the process, without
Process.
yeah.
So this water, the water in West Virginia is coming out of it's artesian. So artesian means it's free flowing above ground, meaning that it's not pumped or pulled or whatever like that. It's free flowing above ground, comes out at about 78 degrees spring. So ancient in history, dating back to the Native Americans and, and goes into like George Washington. So they actually literally have a water festival that they have there every year, bottled waters and so forth. So they're very into the water. But and then in North Carolina, it's what I think 300 or so feet below ground. not 500. It's indigenous land as well. Um, Minerals, crystals, all types of things that are really important, man, to our body, right? Because when we start to even getting into that, I haven't even gotten into that level, but when you find geostones and things like that, it's trapped light. We are literally trapped light. You know what I mean? We're light trapped inside, a water bottle, right? So when we look at that, we understand where minerals and things like that of that nature come from. So different types of water coming from different types of sources. We bring those things in to our community, right? Because without our inner cities, that most of the time what we live off of is water treatment facilities, right? Which is the cycle which I was talking to you about before, why we have no energy in our water, because the water we shower with, the water we cook and coffee and stuff like that with literally has no energy because it's literally being looped and recycled and not going through the same process. It's going through the pipes, that has not been cleaned and changed out in decades, right? And then it's going through concrete. So it's not touching back into the soil. Then they input bacteria and stuff in there that actually help clean it. So, and then they aerate it, So they bring air, they bring and represent all the different things that mother does naturally into a contained facility, right? But the thing that you cannot re-add in there is the energy, So that's the thing why people are deprived and why we have all the diseases. And you can look at where most of the diseases start from. They happen in inner cities or the congested populated areas, right? So that literally talks to in itself. And then, just doing research before, you can see the safest places in America are places that you normally have free healthcare, you know? So like there's a direct correlation between the two of these things. When you're talking about trying to save a group of people, then you have to give them some type of healthcare to provide. In the top 10 countries, I have a list of them, man, that I've written down before, but they literally offer free healthcare, in a sense. So, our country does not do that because they're not going to give you the cure, to something that they already, I need to keep you sick, and keep you dependent on me. And if I keep you dependent on me, then I continue to have you coming back. That's the drug game, So this is trying to free the people with the information is that actually that's my purpose. It's more than the bottled water. How you asked me that, I don't own the water source, so I have to make my importance in the game different than everybody else. For those that control, I'm literally a middleman, a distributor of resources, which is an important one because the value of where we see our water coming from based on even Africa, where they send the women to go pick up and carry these 30-pound jugs, 40-pound jugs of water and bring them back to the village, and they walk miles, with children strapped to them.
All right, so we're gonna do it like this. We had to take a little intermission, so I don't know where we left off, but I know where I want to start, and that is right now. Like it's a lot of fictitious movies. I'm gonna be specific. We got Avatar, Way of the Water. Then you had Black Panther 2, and being that you have so much information and understanding at this point of water, like what lens do you view those movies from? Like when you watch that and you watch these different elements of water and indigenous people and people in Africa and people from the Aztecs, like how do you view movies like that?
I believe them from multiple angles, man, of light, man. Yeah. So I got what's called a water perspective. So I put everything into that arena, right? So a lot of the movies, even back, with Waterworld, right, with Kevin Costner, right. So a lot of things have always been played out through the water, but we're literally in a water ball per se, right? Because the atmosphere and the air is water, right? So if the air was dry, then our lungs would be dry and would be, be desert air, right? So when I look at those movies, I look at what they're fighting over, right? And they're fighting. So they're fighting in water, right? Over water, resources in a sense, right? And a lot of things are depicted in movies that are mainly to come. So it's like foresight And a lot of it is building a couple different ways, the way that I look at it, right? You're building off of informing the people of what's to come or where you plan on taking it, right? And seeing how people, react to these different types of things. The showing, because like as universal laws and so forth, like if you play tricks on people, then you get those tricks back to you. But if you show, you have to basically show and tell. And it's your fault that you don't understand what I'm speaking. Just like when you go to court, you need a lawyer. You don't need a lawyer, but in order to play that game, because the information is here and it's presented, it's your fault that you're not educated on it. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to hire somebody to educate you on that process. So when you start to watch movies, there's a lot of information. The first thing your parents always tell you, don't believe everything you see on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So with that being said, then you can kind of, gauge how you decipher the information with those people that are consciously woke with certain things. You can't cut that light out. So you're going to see certain things because people don't just do stuff to do stuff. Marketing and advertising, promotions, all that stuff, man, it's $1 billion industry. People spend that money based on the science and information behind it. Right. So when they put that information out, they're literally painting a picture, especially in those types of movies, for the next generation, because that's usually how information, like they redo a lot of cartoons, they redo movies, they redo a lot of things over because that's the best way to influence the next generation. Right. So when I watch those movies, I'm literally looking at them preparing our next, kids that are coming up for what's to be coming, what's coming down the pipeline. Right. So what they have now is STEM schools, STEM schools. And you hear researchers talk about stem cells. Well, stem cells have the ability to teach and learn the environment and teach it to cells. So you can put a cell that is not from a muscle cell into it that it'll then cultivate and become a muscle cell, right? So you have science, technology, engineering, and math, right? You put these schools into, areas like we have one in Norfolk, a STEM school, right? But you're literally cultivating the next generation to basically be able to handle the next world problems in a sense. So understanding it on the cellular level, we're all fighting. And I use this phrase often where the fight for balance continues inside the body and out, because that's what we're doing. We're fighting for balance. This is part of our job. This is part of, whatever part of that role is within the body or within this earth body that we're a part of, we have a role. You know what I mean?
Well, with that, when we chatted the other day, I mean, you were when we were kind of just doing a jam session when we first chatted, you
Right.
mentioned the age of Aquarius,
Right.
and break that down. I'm familiar with that concept, but in from your perspective, I'd love for you to break down, you know, because when we talk about, if we're talking about box office films that are being produced, these films could have been produced and came out at any time. And we're
Mhm.
talking about preparation, but right now they're being produced and right now they're being released and they've been worked on for years prior, which means they didn't just say, oh, yeah, we're done. Let's just release it. It was planned to be
Mhm.
released at this time. How does that play into the age of Aquarius? And for people who may not know, what is the age of Aquarius?
Mhm. So the age of Aquarius is the information age, right? It's the water. It's the water at the time. So the information's in the water, right? Basically, right there, it's the water bearer, right? So all those things now you see everybody's in the bottled water industry. Everybody's talking about water. So how acceptable are the people going to be to accept the movie coming out now versus 10, 15 years ago and not understand absolutely any of it? So based on the amount of awakening that you see and how they start to flow into it, then you know that it's going to be more receiving at this point in time, at this stage, right? Because it's the age of Aquarius. And, water is a big thing right now. One of the things that we could talk about, though, as well, is like, when Black Panther was first released and those movies were released, you could see what the nation was actually going through at that point in time. So it plays on you, you know. Um, sports have an impact as well. I'm an Eagles fan. I mean, been, since birth. I haven't, been removed from the game a lot, but I'm just saying even when they first won their first Super Bowl was at a time where the city and the country really needed brotherly love, right? Hey, at that point in time, it's a lot. So there's a lot of symbolisms behind a lot of different things. Nothing just doesn't just happen or just happen by, happenstance, right? These are it's an economic chess game is what I call it. It's an economic chess game where we're literally playing a game and we're either the pieces or we're the players or we're controlling, the board that we're on. But at the end of the day, it's being set up, for a certain way. So a big way is doing it in movies and in music, and then, it's just like talking to somebody who's not into what it is that you're talking to because they haven't been consciously woken up or at that level, right? So then you either boring them or they're not going to be in tune with it. It's like trying to wake somebody up before the alarm goes off, or
Mm-hmm.
so it's basically that.
So I want
But
to backtrack 1 minute. Um, when you first started drinking and understanding spring water, right? How did your body change? What changes did your body go through? What did you noticeably feel? How did you feel different? How did you? I mean, anything that you want to describe in terms of what the difference made? Because before that, maybe you didn't know, so you were drinking water and you felt one way. But what was the difference once you started consuming water that was from such a natural energetic state?
mm, right, so that's a really good question. I've actually never been asked that question. So um, it's gonna sound funny, right? But I found myself to be feeling a lot more invincible, right? And by that meaning like um me drinking the water, my health, I was really in a great place. But it was also what I was doing. So like I was meditating more. I was, on a really good workout plan. I wasn't even wearing jackets during the wintertime at a point where it was just like I was just so convinced on where I was at, you know. Um, health wise. Like I wasn't, like you can't tell me, hey, put a jacket on or you're gonna get sick. No, that's not how people get sick. You see what I'm saying? So I was willing to push myself to certain limits. I knew I was getting good quality water, right? Because I knew I was hydrated properly. I knew, lots of different things about myself that I had no, like you can't deter me a certain type of way if I have the information right within me. And then not only that, it was the people around me that were vouching. And these are things that I don't even often share because sometimes I feel like I'm, being uh I don't know. Like I feel weird, like in the sense of sharing other people's stories, and even with me being water, like I used to do the pH test, but it's like I feel like I'm putting other people down versus in order to put myself up or our company up. So I don't really get into even the pH thing or naming out other brands and companies because every water has its role, whether it's in the body and out. So I cast all that out, right, and just say, look, be informed, an informed consumer. So with that, my mom, she was going to the doctor, and the doctor was like, and she's not the only person. But she was like, yo, the doctor's like, what are you doing? Everything is crystal clear, you clean. Like it's her, it's a good friend of mine. It's like the doctor was like his kidneys was, immaculate. He was like, yo, what are you doing? And what I mean, he had some considerable health problems and stuff like that. And, I had another brother that was telling me that he was giving it to his dog and his rash on his dog. You know what I mean? Like when you start to put things that are from nature, like nature does not go and put out sickness. It's going to put out healing and growth. So, um, it was those different things that literally led me to walk away from my job at one point and was like, okay, like there's a lot of, belief into what it is that I'm doing. And I feel secure about what it is that I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then,
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to heal, let's start with the basis of what everybody needs, right? Water.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason I thought of that is just because I kind of feel like when you your body does change, your body will acclimate to whatever it is that you're doing. So when you're giving it the proper resources, which are provided by nature, it will kind of recalibrate itself. Like the body is one of the most intelligent things in existence, right? Like, and not just our
Absolutely.
bodies, but the body of a horse or the body of a
So I
lion.
said, what are we plugged into? So what are you plugged into? What man can't serve two masters. So what outlet are you going to plug into? Am I going to plug into the artificial, thing, or am I going to plug into the natural? Now we know what happens when you plug into, the artificial things and so forth. Now you have, now you start to teach your body not to die,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because people are in fear of death. But in death, you're actually having real living experiences, right? Because then, Mario can't go to the second level unless he dies from the first or whatever, and then progresses to the
Mm-hmm.
next, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have this thing of preserving our body. So now when you have cancer, cancer is literally the fear of cells dying. So they multiply very rapidly in a sense, just understanding kind of like how a cancerous cell in the body. So now my job is to reproduce as much as possible in order so that I can continue to sustain life, right? So what are you feeding your body in that sense to actually give it and train it to think that way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not death, preservatives.
Mm-hmm.
These different types of things that you're putting in are artificial. So now I draw that into, Waternomics, where understanding about what you eat and what you spend, right? Energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? So it just goes and transfers from one medium to the next. Water is a medium for transferring energy. So if the energy is not in the water that I'm consuming, then what is it in? And what are you putting your faith into?
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, I also, and this is another question, and I think I already know the answer to it, but like, I think when you hear traditional wisdom
Mm-hmm.
or capitalism is saying, you need 8 ounces or 8 glasses of water a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
My what I've discovered is that's not necessarily true, right? Because if you're drinking water through a source such
Mm-hmm.
as natural, your body doesn't need as much because it's
Absolutely
using the
correct.
information and it's not empty and it's energetic. So it's doing what's designed to do in our bodies. But also because you don't need as much, especially if you're eating fruit, especially if you're eating vegetables, what also have that are also coded for our bodies to optimize our bodies. So therefore, it's like all this, 8, 9 bottles of water it's not necessarily needed
Mm-mm.
because the source itself is more pure and you're getting it from more pure sources such as your other fruits and vegetables as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. So that's why it becomes a marketing thing because I gotta put an expiration date on my water bottle, right? You have to put an expiration date on things that um, that is preservatives, right? So it's in order to get it moving through the process, right? So you can't get it to the next stage, or people aren't going to discard it in their cabinets, out their cabinets, if it doesn't have a discard date on it or use, so that you can go back to the store and buy more, which is same way of thinking that we need to eat 3 to 4 times a day. So now, if I constantly have you thinking about how dehydrated you are and where you're dehydrated, it's mainly because of the oxidative stress that we're putting on ourselves or the environment is putting on us, which is literally causing the dehydration phase, right? Because it's like traveling through time and space when you outer space and so forth, and then people start to be really dehydrated at a point, right? Because you're traveling, right? So now when you look at exactly what is when you're traveling right through time and space, you're literally going through a dehydration phase, and the more that they uh, promote dehydration and fear, then the more that they're able to sell you more and more different types of bottles of water, right? Um, I try not to get into that part and that aspect of it because you don't need as much water when you're drinking the right water because you'll be hydrated if you're living the right life and you're having a balanced life. But most of who is right, who is living that? You know what I mean? How many of us are literally living that? Even with the amount of money that you have, Are you really enjoying, the fruits of that balanced labor that you're supposed to be having? And a lot of times, for the most part, people aren't. All right. So now you're going to need more water and actually help to cool the body out, because your body will actually overheat. Because if we're talking about energy, we're talking about electricity, we're talking about RPMs, right? So RPMs is the amount of electrical currency continuously going through your body, right? When you start to get a fever, it means something is short circuited. So that means the RPMs are not going through the whole entire body, is going through one aspect, which is heating up the RPM. And once again, water is one of those things that's going to do what? Cool it down. So a big reason why we have the water and we need that and we don't go over 98.6 is because we need the water to constantly keep our body at cool temperatures, because we're overworked, we're overstressed, So how do we share the load? This is why I go back to the point we was talking about before about being selfish and selfless. Now, sharing the load amongst other things, and other resources is how we are literally supposed to get through life. But capitalism, I have it made so that we only look at just ourselves and bringing ourselves up before we help, because we're naturally designed as people to help one another. This is why in times of crisis, everybody pours out, right? This is why, we have empathy for a lot of different people, right? And then normally we was talking about movies like Black Panther, right? When you don't have that empathy, what happens? You normally get the bad guy casted, right? The bad guy becomes casted based off of people who don't really realize what they actually went through. You know what I mean? So then you'll have, the bad guy that has been thrown out of a building, for whatever reason, and left for dead or something, or have a different, fight for either the people, for their specific race of people, or for the world population, right? You know what I mean? So now you give different, different meanings to what a superhero is, and based on it. Like you said, Black Panther was literally made to fight against his own people, with Superman in Russia. They fought against, different other aspects of the country, right? When it was time to go to war, right? But when you sit here and watch a Black Panther movie, we're fighting amongst each other. And what for? You know what I mean? For resources that we already own and control.
Right. Well, what's interesting to me, man, just in water in its on its own is one of the most intriguing things on this earth. I mean, just because there's so much of it, we've seen and done more in space than we have discovered in the sea. You know what I mean? And for me, that alone is intriguing. So, and the fact that it's something that what we consider as gives life, like it, if water gives life, like they always say, oh, this planet doesn't have any life because there's no water, but we have it. And I think because in it blows my mind that because it's such a vital source, we have such a little understanding of it. That's the part that intrigues me the most. It's like it's the most vital thing to life, but yet we have the least amount of understanding, and that is insane. So that's why I can sit here and have this conversation in regards to water all day, every day, because even though we haven't even scratched the surface, literally, of what water is. And I often have an analogy that I like to use, but it's related to drinking 8 glasses of water a day. So metaphorically, I feel like I have to do that with information every day. I have to quench my thirst. I have to feed myself knowledge or information each day, intentional, not just haphazard information that just, I have to have intentional information through what I read, through what I consume, through what I listen to, who I talk to. And I have to have that every day. And that replenishes and that hydrates me, not like my mind, And by doing that, I disseminate that back out into the atmosphere, because basically I'm a filter myself, and what the work that I produce is going to be from the information and the things that I feed myself with. And this type of information is something that I feel like is enriching and will help so many people. So obviously I want to dive in more, but right now, if somebody's listening and they're saying, well, I don't have access to spring, I only have access to grocery store, I only have access to tap water, what can I do today, right now? What can people do today, right now, to help them starting right now if they don't have access to those? Or do we have access to those things,
Mm.
you know?
All right. Good question, man. Real good question, right? So what I would say, um, definitely tie into your fruits and vegetables, right? Because that's what we're talking about structured water. So the water structure comes from the environment, right? But it's stored into the fruits and the vegetables, right? So that's what gives it its structure. And you hear people talk about H3O2 and things like that of that nature, right? We're still talking about water at the end of the day. So plants, fruits, and vegetables, those things, they have water content in them. So then that's when you start to really consume a lot, and you already need them anyway, right? But that's where a lot of the structure and so forth is placed at. So I would definitely say that. And then one of the main things, if you're getting water, and regardless of where it be, because Dr. Emoto actually went into talking about, but it's the intent, right? So this is why I say it's so important to know the source of where your water is coming from, regardless of who it is or where you get it from, because the intent to what you're doing. Anytime you spend your money with a company, that company you're supporting and you're giving energy to that idea, you're giving it, feeding that intention, whatever you're doing, you're promoting it, you're pushing it, you signed on to it. Same thing with like, I don't support the war. Well, you pay the taxes. You pay the taxes, you support the war. So when I say the intent, Dr. Moto spoke on the intentions basically of you speaking to your water, the music, the intent, love, different types of things. Our intent is to heal our people. So our intent is whether we touch the bottle of water or not, the brand family Springs has an intent to it. And that's what we plan on doing with it. Right. So the intent of what that bottled water is doing and what it's labeled as and where it comes from all have major roles of importance in it. So get to know your source. Got to get to know the source. Know where it's coming from, what they're doing with it.
When we do that, what should we be looking for?
Definitely spring, because you want to be tied into, right? So, you know, I'm specifically into our smaller business, right? Promoting Be Clear Water. Brother out in Milwaukee owns his own water company. Live alkaline water in North Carolina. It's just it's positivity water, moon jug water in Atlanta, these different types of, and the reason why I put out, our small bottled water companies, right, is because when it comes to providing resources to areas of importance, right, that are having water crises and things of that nature, we have to be attached to a source, right? And a lot of times that source is provided through Nestea and these other big time bottling companies, right? That gives them the opportunity to literally create something different that doesn't necessarily support us, which has us relying on their system versus that ours, right? And those of us that live in the community. So now we start talking about a supply chain. Which is one of the main reasons why we're going through the economic structures in the system and the water is depleting and things of that nature. You have water being misplaced all over the world. You have so many different, little ponds and lakes being man-made, formed to create housing, just to boost the price of the houses that's around the lake. That's all. It's a man-made lake. The Lord gave us enough water, that we have surrounding, so we can't make more of. We take from and then put in. So you see these little ponds and stuff off the side of highways and things like that. You're displacing the water. So you're wondering why other areas are depleting, because you're moving it, supply, right? So water is extremely expensive to move from one spot to the next. It's extreme because it costs way too much to actually move. So we're losing resources behind moving product that doesn't need to be moved at a distance that is being moved. So when I tried to be able to want to help the people in Jackson, Mississippi, or even in Houston, Texas, what I did instead of me trying to send, and I would like my brand to be down there and be noted as well, but I send the money to the closest person down that way that was doing work in that area, right? So then now that gets there a lot faster, and that empowers that company to basically be the support system versus for that community or that area down there. And that's how we send our release. So it's literally building a supply chain, because the inner matrix of the body, right, that we was talking about before, that mitochondria, right? It is in there called an electron transport chain, which is a supply chain, right? In our inner cities, and what we're building right now with our collective, is that we do not have a supply chain that supports our inner city small business community.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is for big businesses. Big businesses have big supply chains, right? And they're usually called very expensive. But for us to establish one in our inner cities and our inner communities, between a network between our small businesses, is something that we have to do. And we can't rely on Amazon to be just to be that source for that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're working extremely hard on a small business level, which means that we're small cells, and we're small cell thinking, instead of collectively bringing our resources together to then purchase and ask for requests from the big companies or the big manufacturers, right? To be a part of that supply chain, to connect to it, right? So now when you do that, now you have a steady flow into the small, and then you have a steady flow out. We're overstressed and we're overworked, so they're trying to find all these automated systems and things like that to actually help reduce it. And it will, you know what I mean? And people are getting money through other different ways, but you'll find the same thing constantly continue to keep happening, because we keep moving water into areas that don't need water, like California, you know what I mean? And then have deserts, you know what I mean? And then they're number 2 in agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So when we continue to do things that make no sense, we're going to continue to find ourselves, while we continuously keep going into debt and with taxes, and have never been out of it,
Well, and
because it's
that's
working.
but that's what I'll do. I'll put together in the show notes a list of resources in some of these small businesses, so that, and that's the reason why I asked that question, just so we will know, and to be able to know where to go to get, and not only have access to the small business, but to create that supply chain, to create that inner business within our own community, serving those things, and not having to necessarily use those big companies that don't necessarily have anything in mind other than profit.
Right. And we back at it again.
We back at it, round 3, and of many, many conversations to come. But right now we've talked, a lot about water, and we talked a lot about the problems that you solving in the world, that you helping solve in the world. But I want to talk about you a little bit, bro. Like I want people to get an opportunity to know you a little bit. Like, I don't want to be cliche and just say, who is Chris, but who is Chris? Like, what who is Chris?
Ah, man. Well, Chris is still finding himself, actually, through his life experiences, right? Which I believe I'm here for, right? So I really enjoy helping people, right? That's, you know, there's no really greater gift, man, than the excitement, man, of knowing that you just helped somebody, man. Like, there's real achievement in that. There's real excitement. There's real thrill, and it's not a monetary thing. It's not looking at my bank account and seeing things, man. But it's a genuine, fulfillment, that I get from helping people. And I'm a hard worker, man. So, like, I work with my hands. I enjoy working with my hands. I enjoy, getting down to business. I enjoy learning, right? And I learn on the job. OJT is kind of me, right? So a lot of the things that I do, even with the water business and so forth, I put myself in it, in the front line of it. There's many thoughts on how people should run a business as a CEO or president or whatnot. Some kings lead from the castle and the throne, and some kings are on the horse in the front line, man, yelling charge, right? So I'm one of those. That's
Mm.
who I am. I'm on the front line. I like to be with my people, man.
So let me ask you this. With that being said, is it frustrating that you I know for me, like if I'm doing something with the intention to help somebody and
Mhm.
it's like people don't get it or they don't see it, is that frustrating for you? And if it is, how do you deal with that?
It started off being, but I've done numerous, a lot of business and ventures, man, and pyramid things and so forth of that nature, man. So I came into this a little bit with a lot more understanding. I shouldn't say a little bit, a lot more understanding, right, of friends and family and those that support. You're gonna have those that support and those that don't. And then, just through studying and understanding that, sometimes, blood may be thicker than water, right? But your blood needs water in order to move,
Mm-hmm.
right? So with that being said, sometimes in order to your family on a cellular level and understanding the word family, family literally means servant, right? So in order to serve is those you are closest to. You might be closer with your brother, people that you're in business with, more so than your quote unquote family that you were born into. You can be born into a family and not have the same blood type,
Mm-hmm.
right? So much for the blood understanding. So me is my family is those that understand me, understand what we're doing, understand where we're going, and that's how we have a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based off of that. So, and you kind of outgrow those things. So I've become a lot more tolerable of understanding, you know what I mean, where everybody's not in that same place. I'm not going to force feed my water or information to you. If you're not wanting what I have to provide, then, so be it. Then I hope that you do find blessings and, so forth somewhere else.
So with all of that being said, one thing I know about life is that you learn more from failures than you do from winning, right?
That's
Or
good.
getting it
About the
right.
journey.
So what are some failures that you feel like that have taught you the most? That
Mm.
what are some failures that you've experienced that you walked away from? Maybe you didn't know the answer at the time, or maybe you did, but like what are some things that like you failed at and like that you gained the most fruit from in your life?
Um, man, so many, so many. Man, I'm just thinking it from school to personally being married, you know what I mean, and now divorced, and a daughter in a separated home is, it's kind of hard, and one of those things I feel that I'm constantly pushing towards with family. Sometimes the picture that we paint is the thing that we're looking for most, right?
Mm.
So we look for to find those things in the other things that are surrounding us, right? So we can create our environment to which brings us comfortability, right? So with that, I feel that it also draws me closer to the community and to the world around me, right? Because not everybody, a lot of us that are from broken homes, and God forbid that you have to go through any of the different things that many of us have to go through, but sometimes we have to go through it and to experience it, right? In order that we can share it on platforms that that's provided so that others can be able to pick up on it, because a lot of the content and information that we have out here nowadays via social media is watered down information. So with that, uh, I appreciate the journeys of me going through this bottled water business has been a lot of ups and downs. It's a lot of waves, with trying to keep, I shouldn't say keep, right? But keeping a steady flow of water in so that it can go. We often run out of water. And right now we're not run out of cases. And I find out that the problem where we get our bottled water from, a small business too, and have limited resources to pull from. So now I understand and kind of, where we might just Like, yo, why you ain't got no water? Why is this the problem? Oh, what you need some money? But like, money is not literally the answer to solving me getting all the water. Like, it can help tremendously, right? But if you provide more work than the facility is able to put out, and they don't have the resource you're talking about, small country, a small community type town, then where they're going to pull the workers from, and then they're supporting not just your company, right, but grocery stores and other things of that nature, right? That, all this have to come out of this one facility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, ultimately it makes me look at the supply chain system up close and personal
Mm-hmm.
because it affects me. It affects my daughter. Affects, when I'm able to spend time with her a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times. And it's very easy somebody can say, hey, you just hire somebody to get somebody to do it. But then you're taking that person away from maybe their family, maybe, or you still have to have some type of empathy and understanding the
Well,
situation that you're placed in.
I mean, but you just describe yourself as that leader who out on the battlefield. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm that like you. So that is why you ain't hiring nobody, because you want to be on the battlefield, just like everybody else. So I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, how do you, with all that being said, how do you prioritize the things that's important to you though? Like, what are some tools that you use for prioritizing and even understand what it is that's important to you?
Judgment, discernment. Most of the time, I'm not the best with it. It's just being honest and transparent, um, because it's mainly the discipline of the doing the monotony of the same thing consistently over time. And then I'm very easily, if I meet uh something, like a situation that may be an obstacle, just like water, either I'm gonna rise above it or I'm gonna find a way to flow around it, or so forth like that. Which is not me necessarily running from a problem, but I'm finding a way. Like there's an easier way, a solution, right? So for me, I just kind of take those things that as they come to me and I figure it out as it come. I'm not really good with that though, to be
Hmm.
honest with you. So that's a struggling thing that I think that um I've placed. But then for me, for me dealing with it, I'm able to find other people that are in our business in the water game that have reached out and said things as well that they're struggling with. So in my vulnerability and transparency, I actually find other people that are needed, which then makes me want to be able to find solutions because then finding and helping them find solutions helps myself find a solution.
Well, you said a few words that I want to key in on. One being discernment, which is such a thing of beauty, in anything. When you can build up and know and listen to your inner voice and be able to have discernment on certain situations, that's a superpower. But another superpower I feel is vulnerability, and not only is vulnerability, but it's vulnerability as a man in 2023, which a lot of us around our age, and the before us, vulnerability wasn't necessarily something that we were taught. That's something that we kind of are just now figuring out, and we're figuring out how important it is.
Mm-hmm.
Speak to that a bit. How I mean, why is it important for people to be and listen, those two words go together, and
Mm-hmm.
discernment and vulnerability, because you have to have discernment to know when is the right time to be vulnerable, because all situations don't require
Right.
or aren't safe for you to be vulnerable. And then I guess to make this equation complete, it'll be like uh, discernment plus awareness equals when you should be vulnerable equals vulnerability. So speak to that a bit.
Yeah. So um my vulnerability comes from, I would say uh the information the experiences that I go through and the information that I have that needs to be provided. So like, um, if I'm not vulnerable, and I see a lot in through hip hop and rap artistry, right? Say, rappers are gods, rappers are gods because they are able to speak in verses. Men are speaking prose, right?
Sure.
So Um, the ability to share and reflect the stories of your life is literally what empowers everybody else and the people around you. So when I hear somebody, Jay-Z, I'm a huge fan of Jay-Z, right? But when you go into telling the mantras of your story, which are most first albums of artists, are a replay of their history and their things that they went through in their life, which are usually their best albums. So then I take myself and say, okay, I'm not that, right? But how do I put that into this? So the things, so much is glorified in, entrepreneurship and owning your own business and, even being in the water business where a lot of people think it's just, it's $1 billion industry and all these different things. You can make all this, but it's so many different levels of learning that like you don't go to water school to learn how to be a water distributor and own your own bottled water. That's not something that you can go to school for. You have to have a passion, desire, and learn these things. So, and me sharing that and sharing different things of how I receive it, I have uh, the ability to basically be vulnerable about my situations and my struggle that I'm going through this process and showing you that, like it's real out here. It's just not, peaches and cream. And, no matter how many buildings and stuff that I walk into and try to get my water into, most people look at it from either a price point or, all water's, the same. So I just kind of, I use my discernment to figure out, is that going to affect me? Am I going to let that affect me and how I continue to move on? Or um, do I just continue to, keep on trucking and have tough skin, right?
Well,
And
I
not
well,
be
well,
affected by
I well, I think now that you put that in perspective, I think it also has something to do with the fact that you have other people in mind. And I think what helps you have that type of discernment is, or what helps me have that type of discernment is that if I share this, will this help someone? Could this potentially help someone else?
right.
Right. I
So
mean,
and right. So then the selfish part of me would be like, nah, don't let nobody know about, what you're going through. Or, it's like, well, I haven't gotten all these things in place yet, and I don't want to speak about it until I get it in order. So then I can have, so for instance, you hear a lot of stories about people being homeless at some point, right? At some point in time, you talk about the owner of Nike was living in his car at one point in time, or you hear these feel good stories about people that were struggling at one point, but you don't hear about it when they're in the struggle. Most of the time, you hear about it after they come out.
mhm.
Tyler Perry is another one. I mean, there's a lot of them that go through it, and for a period, I really thought, and I still do it. Think that that's a phase, sometimes most of us or some of us have to go through because it's a lot of hardship out here. But then going through the hardship, you find the greatness at the end of it. You know what I mean? So it's like when I used to love watching, Shannon Sharp or, sports, players that went through these difficult environments, one bedroom apartment, four of them in the bed, you know what I mean? Like those
Sure.
different. So like in learning these things, we don't never learn them as we're going through them, or people don't talk or they're afraid to talk about them as they're going through them. When we learn them is after they done been through it and we see all the glorious things that happen. So we kind of literally cast it out at that point in time. I'm one of those people that been through and going through a whole lot, even a homeless phase at a point, and so forth as I'm running this business, and it's like I don't look for pity. I don't want, oh man, because but I wanted to get through it, and so that I can say, look, man, this is what I've been through. This is what I'm going through. You can make it too. But a lot of times we don't share it as we're going through. We like to bring ourselves on the other side, but there's so many other people that are going through, and this is where mental health becomes a real issue and a real problem because it's the ability for people to express themselves, and when they're holding a lot of things back versus via their throat chakra, and they're not getting their opinion and not voicing out and not acting out what it is, then it turns into a negative energy, a negative flow. It becomes something else. And this is where most people are really literally trapped at as far as trying to help, because now you have stagnated energy that dies and it kills you inside, right? And then people can see that. So Um, that's kind of why I say, your real family sometimes and friends are basically those people that are really closest to you, depending on what you're bonding with and what it is that you bond with. You know what I mean? So they're gonna be the ones say, man, you all right, yo, you're a little off today, you know. So
Mm-hmm. I
yeah,
mean, well, it's definitely. I mean, and you referred to this earlier. It's a collective effort. It's just it's collective whether we want it to be or not.
right, yeah. End of
You
the
know what
day,
I'm saying? At the
yeah,
end of the day, it's collective whether we want it to be or not. Because even if you're talking about like ancestors or people that live 100 years ago or 50 years ago, they contributed to the collective of what we are now experiencing. Like
yep,
things were created out of the pain and reflection of things that happened before. So even if you don't think it's collective, everything that you experience in your life, every tool that you use came from the collective effort of someone or somehow, some way. Well, even if it was just, I mean, it was collective for your parents to even to get together in the first place.
right,
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? I mean, it's just so many elements or that link to being a collective effort, and then knowing when to have that discernment and knowing when to be vulnerable and knowing when to go to someone or knowing when to uh, even just tap into nature and going letting that someone be yourself and hearing that clear voice within yourself be able to give you the answer to whatever it is.
Mm.
But either way it goes, it requires a level of discernment. So and I think those are important things to talk about because they are tools. And even before we were recording, we were talking about the importance of tools and having tools in your tool bag to navigate through life in general.
Right. Yeah. In order to build anything, you have to have a collection of supplies and resources, right? So, one of the things that we're going through right now, as far as in this nation, is a destruction and a rebuilding phase, right? So it's the preparation of the rebuilding. So you see a lot of collectives and people starting to work together, and it's a great moment. So I don't, never want to cast out so much of the negativity of things that are going in because those things have to happen. There has to be a downward swing in order for the upward swing. It's just the way cycles are, waves of energy, all those different things move. So you see the people preparing for the uprise, and you see some going through the downward swing,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. So, but this is what things don't gather in the air; things disperse in the air, right, and go out and expand in the air.
Mm-hmm.
These all come together when you in the low point, right? So,
I got a random question. When's your birthday?
November 15th.
November, that's Scorpio. So I was guessing as I'm thinking, I was like, man, how cool would it be? He is no way he's not a water sign. That's what I
Oh
was
yeah,
thinking. There's no
definitely.
way that you're not, which I'm a Cancer, so it's like I think I understand it. And I also think like um I mean, and you use a lot of water references, and I do too naturally, just because I think like when it comes to like conversations that I prefer conversations with depth. I don't like surface stuff. I mean, I like stuff where we're so far in the depths of everything,
Yeah,
light might not even come to, but or it's so deep that I am the light in that area. And I like having conversations with people that are like that as well. So that's what I think has made this conversation so impactful. And I'm really hoping that we can do another at some point because you're a real wealth of knowledge. You're a real wealth of experiences, and I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and have these type of conversations, and share and be vulnerable and be able to like highlight some of the things that you've used as tools, some other things that other people can use as tools, and and the biggest thing that I'm walking away with is the fact that to it's cliche, but it's being the solution that you want to see in the world. And it's like, and it starts from healing yourself on the inside through what you do every day, for what you consume every day. with something that we all need, which is life, which is water. And then if you think about it, and if you've listened to any part of this conversation, you can see not just from a physical standpoint, but a literal and a literal metaphorical, whatever it is, it applies to our life on every level. And that's what's incredible. So thank you a lot. And please share all your social. Please share how people can connect with you. And then I got a couple more questions that I want to wrap
Oh
up
yeah,
with.
absolutely. So yes, this is Family Springs. You can get get a hold of us at familyspringswater.com. It's our website. Um, Contact us via through there or social media. Social media, Family Springs on Instagram, or Family Springs LLC on Facebook. But yeah, Instagram or fan base. Fan base. I'm starting to get more into the fan base. I think I'm Alkaline Man on there. I think I got to take a look at it when I get a chance, though. But yeah, yeah, definitely you can DM me or definitely send me an email or you can call us via our website.
So I'll have all of that linked in the show notes. So we'll get all of that from you. But one question that I always like to kind of end with is, what do you think is something that everyone should experience?
That sounds great. Learning how to die. Learning how to die. Learning how to, and what I say by that is learning how to cut loose of the things that we think is so much more valuable that we've been separated in order to separate from this this ideology of what this world is. So the thing that keeps us contained is fear in the bubble, and the information is life. Water is life. Water goes through every plane of existence, so nothing never dies. It just continues to be recycled back around again. So learning how to die, and learning what that death is because it becomes the rebirth of something else. And
Yeah,
that's
that's interesting because I recently heard, and I never thought about this. The person was talking about how everything has a vibration, right? That I understood. But the fact that when they said, because in my mind, I never thought about this, but they said when someone dies, there's a decomposition process that happens, which is a vibration.
right,
It's even though your body's not physically, with a soul or whatever it is, with life, but life is still existing because it's still causing a vibration because it's still going through a process of something, even
right,
in death. That
right.
blew my mind. And I
Even
think
yeah,
that's essentially what you're saying as well, right?
absolutely, absolutely. There's many different forms of death. So we really, are really stuck with the physical aspect of it, you know, because we see things close up, right? But and me, and even me myself, I'm saying this as I'm speaking to myself and speaking to you with this question, right? When you don't fear that, then you're able to fully express yourself and be the light that others need you to be in order to see that, right? So, you know, versus me being cast and condemned as a conspiracy theorist, all these other different labels that we put labels on the people, right? And for fear of those labels, then people would just kind of hold themselves and their thoughts and their expressions in. But when you learn how to die, you really are not saying, look, that doesn't hold. You don't hold me. And your perception of me will not hold me. My truth is spoken from what I know of, my experiences, and the things that I'm sharing. These are things that I'm learning as well to go through so that I'm not worried about what the next person thinks of me. You know what I mean? And that's essentially what we have to be at because those who are called to consider the craziest are usually the most ingenious.
Well, even when you say that, it just made me think of revolutionary humans that have lived, such as, those people weren't afraid to die. I mean, regardless of what you believe, I mean, Jesus wasn't afraid to die. Malcolm X wasn't afraid to die. Uh, Certain people just weren't. Martin Luther King wasn't afraid. That these people weren't afraid of that. which gave them a certain level of freedom and expression. And yeah, their physical bodies left, but we're
I'll
still.
take you back even further than that. The people on the boat coming over to America that jumped in the water weren't afraid to die. Like that's like, and that goes back to where we talk about Avatar and so forth, and those things with the water and the people coming out of the water. Those are our ancestors. Our ancestors are in that water that they jumped off of before they came here, because they knew that living is more than that death that they were going to bring us into.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, I don't think it's a better way to wrap up the conversation than that. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's gonna get no higher than that. But definitely love to have you back for a round 2 at some point, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
I appreciate you, man, having me on and sharing your platform with me, brother. So definitely, man. And I got your information. I'm following you on IG. Send me your info though too, bro, so I can make sure I put it in the description and stuff below, so that I can share it as well.
No doubt.
All right.